The queen roared the truth. Then the crowd turned to me and shouted, "King!" Alden Carter's shuttle glided through the swirling colors of Erythra Prime's atmosphere, reflecting the sunlight like a giant crystal. From the window, he could see the city of the galactic summit spread across floating platforms and crystal towers that touched the sky. The planet was unlike anything he had seen before. Buildings shimmered in hues of violet and emerald, and streams of light carried people and vehicles between the islands of civilization. It was a sight that took his breath away. He had trained for this moment for years. As a human diplomat, his job had always been to represent Earth in galactic matters. Yet, this summit was unlike anything in human history. Delegates from hundreds of species had come together to negotiate peace, trade, and alliances. Some were towering beings of stone-like skin, others shimmered like liquid glass. Alden felt small among them, not just in size but in presence. Humans were often underestimated, even at intergalactic events like this. As he prepared to leave the shuttle, he reviewed his notes again. His mission was simple on paper: ensure that humanity's interests were represented in the new trade agreements forming across the galaxy. But Alden knew better. These interstellar negotiations were never simple. Alliances shifted in whispers. Friendships could crumble over a single misunderstanding, and some species had memories that stretched back thousands of years. Stepping onto the landing platform, Alden was greeted by the hum of technology and life. Automated vehicles carried delegations from their shuttles to the summit hall. Floating platforms moved silently above him, connecting towers and gardens in ways that seemed impossible. He took a deep breath. This was the beginning, and he had to be ready for anything. His first stop was the orientation hall, where he was introduced to the human liaison team. Among them was Lyra Natham, a fellow diplomat with years of experience in galactic relations. She was calm, organized, and always 2 steps ahead. "Remember, Alden," she said, "here, even the smallest gesture can have consequences. Watch, listen, and never assume anything is simple." Alden nodded, feeling the weight of her words. As they walked through the hall, they passed delegates from species he could barely identify. Some had 6 arms, some glowed faintly, and others communicated with movements that humans could barely notice. It was overwhelming, but Alden focused on one principle he had always relied on: honesty and observation. In a world of complexity, clarity could become strength. Finally, they reached the summit hall. The building was enormous, with walls that shifted colors like a living rainbow. The ceiling arched so high that it seemed to disappear into the sky. Delegates were already gathered, speaking in dozens of languages, using devices to translate their words instantly. Alden could feel the tension in the air. It was not anger, but a careful energy, the energy of beings who knew that even a single misstep could affect entire civilizations. He found his assigned seat at the human delegation's table. It was small compared to the seats of the larger species, but it was positioned where he could see the entire room. And there she was, Queen Ceralia, ruler of the Varen Empire. She moved with quiet authority, her presence commanding without force. Her golden eyes scanned the hall, observing every delegate. Alden had read about her reputation. She was known not only for her wisdom, but also for her ability to see the truth in situations that others could not. The thought both intimidated and inspired him. The opening ceremony began. Lights shifted across the hall, casting patterns on the walls and floors. A soft hum filled the air, resonating with a vibration that seemed almost alive. Alden listened as the opening speech highlighted the purpose of the summit: cooperation, fairness, and mutual understanding. Delegates nodded, some politely, some skeptically. Alden realized that much of what they said was formal. The real negotiations would happen in subtle exchanges, in quiet conversations away from the public eye. During the first session, Alden noticed a small delegation from the Kryn, a species whose home planet had suffered from trade exploitation for generations. Their representatives were trying to speak, but the larger, more powerful species ignored them. Alden's heart tightened. He knew the rules. As a human, he could not intervene boldly, but he also knew that sometimes a small voice could make a difference. When the session paused for discussions, Alden approached the Kryn delegate, a small being with emerald-colored skin and delicate wings. "I hope your voice will be heard," he said softly. The delegate looked up, surprised. We are trying," they replied. Alden smiled. "Then I will help you. Sometimes being a friend is more important than following protocol." He spent the next hours quietly advocating for the Kryn. He approached other delegates politely, presenting their points and making sure their concerns were included in the records. It was subtle, careful work, but he could see a change in the room. Where before the Kryn had been invisible, now some delegates glanced their way, considering their words. Alden realized that small actions, grounded in honesty and respect, could ripple across even a room full of giants. Later, as he took a moment to rest in a quiet corner of the hall, a soft voice called to him, "Human, come with me." He turned to see a Varen aide gesturing toward a side corridor. Curiosity outweighed caution. He followed, careful to remain calm and respectful. The aide led him to a private chamber, and there, waiting with a serene yet commanding presence, was Queen Ceralia herself. "Sit, Alden Carter," she said, her voice calm but resonant. "I have been watching you today." Alden bowed slightly, heart racing. The Queen's reputation made even the most confident diplomats nervous, yet she did not intimidate him in a harmful way. Instead, she studied him as if weighing his mind and spirit together. "You have done something unusual," she continued. "You listen, you observe, and you speak with honesty even when it is not expected." Alden swallowed. I only try to do what is right, Your Majesty." The Queen's eyes sparkled. "Sometimes what is right is not what is easy. That is why humans are interesting. Your simplicity is not weakness. It is clarity. You see the truth where others see only complexity." Alden was humbled. Never in his life had a leader spoken to him with such understanding and depth. "Thank you," he said, unsure if his words were sufficient. Queen Ceralia smiled faintly, a gesture that seemed both kind and mysterious. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and discussions. Alden moved carefully, navigating alien customs, languages, and protocols. He found that his human traits, curiosity, empathy, and honesty, were not disadvantages. In many cases, they drew attention and respect. Delegates approached him, curious about the human who treated others with dignity regardless of size, status, or power. As the day ended, Alden returned to his quarters. From the window, he could see the floating lights of the city below, dancing like stars in a river of crystal. He reflected on the day. He had arrived as a quiet observer, a minor representative of humanity. Yet already he had begun to make a difference, not through power or wealth or intimidation, but through simple human qualities. He knew that the summit would only become more complex. Tomorrow would bring negotiations, challenges, and decisions that could affect entire civilizations. But Alden felt ready. If he could stay true to his principles, honesty, empathy, and courage, he could navigate the complexities and perhaps, just perhaps, show the galaxy the value of humanity. As he prepared for sleep, Alden thought of Queen Ceralia's words: simplicity as strength, clarity as power. It was a lesson he would carry into every interaction, every negotiation, and every challenge in the days to come. And though he did not yet realize it, his actions on this first day had already set a ripple into motion that could change the galaxy forever. The next morning, Alden woke to the soft hum of the summit city outside his window. Light reflected off the crystal towers, creating patterns that danced across his quarters. He felt a mixture of excitement and nerves. Today promised more than the formal ceremonies of yesterday. Today, real negotiations would begin, and he had to ensure that humanity's voice, and the voices of those who often went unheard, was heard clearly. He dressed simply, as he always did. A human diplomat did not need extravagant clothes to command respect. He needed clarity, calm, and presence. As he walked through the hallways, he observed the delegates in small clusters, conversing in languages he could not understand. Yet Alden had learned to read more than words. Body language, tone, and subtle gestures often revealed more than the speeches themselves. Alden's first task was a meeting with representatives from the Zeroth Collective, a technologically advanced species known for their intellect and precision. They had come to the summit seeking agreements that would secure rare energy sources for their growing networks of space stations. Alden listened carefully, asking questions that highlighted Earth's willingness to cooperate and share resources. Unlike some delegates who flaunted their intelligence to intimidate, Alden's approach was simple: listen, understand, and offer honest solutions. The Zeroth representatives were intrigued. "You speak with a clarity we rarely encounter," one of them said. "Humans are straightforward, it is unusual," Alden smiled. "Sometimes clarity can prevent misunderstanding." He did not boast, he simply stated a fact. And in that moment the Zeroth began to see him not as a naive human but as a thoughtful negotiator. After the meeting, Alden returned to the main hall. There, he noticed the Kryn delegation again, still struggling to make their concerns known. They were discussing supply lines for their food production systems, which had been disrupted by previous trade agreements favoring larger species. Their words were polite, their tone respectful, yet many in the hall ignored them. Alden felt a tug at his heart. During a short break, he approached the Kryn once more. "I understand your concerns," he said. "You deserve to have your voice heard." The Kryn delegate's wings fluttered nervously. "We have tried, but no one listens." Alden leaned in slightly, speaking with quiet determination. "Then I will help you. Sometimes a human voice can carry weight when others fail to hear you." With careful steps, Alden began speaking to other delegates, presenting the Kryn's needs as opportunities for collaboration rather than problems. His approach was simple but effective. He emphasized fairness, mutual benefit, and cooperation, concepts that even the most cunning delegates could understand. Slowly, other species began to pay attention. What had been a quiet, ignored plea began to gain acknowledgement. Alden realized that diplomacy was not only about strategy, but about the courage to stand for truth. As midday approached, Alden was invited to a private audience with Queen Ceralia. The Queen's chambers were luminous, with light reflecting off polished crystal floors and walls. She stood by a large window, gazing at the city below. When she turned to him, her golden eyes seemed to see beyond appearances, beyond protocol, and straight into his thoughts. "You have done well today," she said softly. "I have observed how you handle the unseen, the small, and the overlooked. Most would pass by, most would defer to power, but you listen and you act." Alden felt a surge of humility. "I only try to do what is right," he said. The Queen's expression softened, as though she approved of his honesty. She gestured for him to sit. "Alden, the summit is more complicated than it appears. Alliances are not only formed by promises but by understanding motives. Many here act out of fear, pride, or tradition. You, however, see through these layers. That is why I am entrusting you with a delicate task." Alden's curiosity piqued. "What task, Your Majesty?" he asked, leaning forward. Queen Ceralia studied him for a moment, then spoke carefully. "There is a message that must be delivered. It is not public, but it must reach the council. The message contains a truth long hidden, a truth that, if revealed improperly, could create distrust or panic. But handled wisely, it could prevent future conflict and foster cooperation." Alden nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "I will deliver it carefully," he promised. The Queen inclined her head. "I believe in your judgment." Remember, the strength of humans lies not in size or power, but in clarity, honesty, and courage. Her words stayed with him as he left her chambers. Returning to the main hall, Alden felt a renewed sense of purpose. He observed the delegates with sharper focus, noting patterns, alliances, and unspoken tensions. Each conversation he had, each question he asked, was informed by the Queen's guidance. He moved among the factions, building quiet connections and understanding the nuances that many overlooked. During a mid-afternoon session, Alden encountered a group of delegates from the Relari, a species known for their diplomatic cunning. They spoke in subtle, layered language, often using double meanings to test their counterparts. Alden listened carefully, nodding politely and responding with direct but respectful questions. Slowly, the Relari began to respect his approach. They were not used to humans who did not flinch or misinterpret their subtle cues. Alden realized that his human simplicity was a form of quiet power, an unexpected advantage in a hall full of seasoned negotiators. After the session, Alden took a brief moment to rest in a quiet alcove. His thoughts returned to the Kryn delegation. He knew that delivering the Queen's message required tact, but he also knew that the truth could not be hidden forever. The challenge would be to present it in a way that encouraged collaboration rather than fear. Late in the afternoon, an aide approached him. "The Queen requests your presence again," the aide said. Alden followed, moving through corridors adorned with alien art and technology that shimmered and shifted like living creatures. When he entered the Queen's chamber, she greeted him with a small smile. "You have observed well today," she said. "You understand not just what is said, but what is left unsaid. That is why you are the right person to carry this message." She handed him a crystalline device, its surface glowing softly. "This contains the information you must share. Study it carefully. Its purpose is to reveal hidden manipulation without creating chaos. Your role is crucial." Alden held the device reverently. He spent the next hour reviewing its contents. The message revealed a subtle but long-standing deception. A species that had claimed neutrality was actually manipulating trade routes for their benefit. The implications were significant, but the Queen's notes provided guidance on how to present it calmly, without inciting anger or distrust. By the time Alden returned to the main hall, evening lights bathed the floating city in a gentle glow. He could see the delegates preparing for the day's final session. Some whispered nervously, unaware that the truth would soon be revealed. Alden felt a mixture of anticipation and responsibility. He was just a human, small and often underestimated. Yet the task before him was one that could shape the future of the summit and the galaxy itself. As the final session began, Alden moved to a position where he could address the council. He took a deep breath, remembering Queen Ceralia's guidance: "Speak clearly, honestly, and calmly. Let the facts shine and let reason guide the response." When he began to speak, he noticed subtle shifts in the room. Delegates who had ignored the Kryn before now leaned forward. Eyes that had barely registered his presence now watched carefully. Alden's voice, steady and deliberate, outlined the truth contained in the Queen's message. He emphasized the impact on trade fairness and the opportunities for collaboration that honesty could create. Some delegates were surprised, others skeptical. Alden welcomed their questions and answered with simple, clear reasoning. He did not try to dominate the conversation or overwhelm them with jargon. Instead, he used human empathy and logic to help them understand the situation. Slowly, the tension in the room eased. Where there had been frustration, now there was curiosity. Where there had been dismissal, now there was consideration. As the session ended, Alden realized that something remarkable had happened. The seeds of change had been planted. Delegates who once overlooked the small and powerless were beginning to reconsider. The Kryn delegation, once invisible, now had their concerns noted and respected. Alden understood that truth: when delivered with clarity and compassion, could create bridges even in the most complex situations. Exhausted but satisfied, Alden returned to his quarters. The city outside glimmered with life, a reflection of the quiet but profound shift he had helped initiate. He knew the days ahead would bring more challenges, more negotiations, and perhaps more surprises. But for the first time, he felt that humanity, through honesty, courage, and understanding, could truly make a difference in the galaxy. As he prepared to rest, Alden reflected on Queen Ceralia's words: simplicity as strength, clarity as power. He understood that his journey had only begun, yet already he was no longer just an observer. He was a participant, a voice for fairness, and a small beacon of hope in a galaxy full of complex ambitions. The night fell softly over Erythra Prime, and Alden Carter, human diplomat, drifted into sleep with one thought in mind. Tomorrow, he would continue to speak the truth, and perhaps change the galaxy in ways no one had yet imagined. The morning sun spilled over the crystalline towers of Erythra Prime, casting long, dancing reflections across the floating platforms. Alden Carter awoke with a sense of purpose heavier than the previous day. He knew that today would be the day his careful observations and quiet interventions would matter the most. The Queen's message rested in his hands, a crystal device containing the truth that could change the course of the summit. But he also understood that delivering it would not be simple. Many delegates valued tradition and pride over fairness, and a single misstep could undo the progress he had made. He dressed carefully, choosing neutral colors that would not distract or provoke. Humans were already a curiosity to many species, and Alden wanted attention drawn to his words, not his appearance. As he walked to the summit hall, he noticed subtle shifts in the atmosphere. Delegates exchanged cautious glances, whispering in languages he could not understand, yet he sensed the tension. Something was brewing, a mixture of curiosity, suspicion, and anticipation. Upon entering the hall, Alden's eyes were drawn immediately to the Kryn delegation. They were more attentive than before, their emerald wings fluttering nervously. Alden offered them a small, reassuring smile. They needed confidence, not pity. He had learned that encouragement could be just as powerful as logic. Today, he would ensure their voices were not just heard but understood. The opening session began with the usual formalities. Light shifted across the hall, reflecting in patterns that created the illusion of movement in the walls themselves. Delegates spoke, their words flowing in countless languages. The translation devices rendered the meanings instantly, yet Alden knew that understanding went beyond words. Tone, body language, hesitation, these revealed the unspoken motives behind the statements. He watched carefully, noting who aligned with whom and who listened in silence, quietly weighing every word. Finally, it was time for Alden to act. He approached the central podium with calm determination, holding the crystal device in both hands. Delegates turned to watch the human who had become, surprisingly, a focal point of interest. Alden's voice, steady and unshaken, began to outline the message from Queen Ceralia. He spoke clearly, choosing words that were simple yet precise. The message revealed that a supposedly neutral species, the Trevorians, had been subtly manipulating trade routes and resource allocations for years. The evidence was carefully documented in the device, and Alden presented it in a way that emphasized fairness and cooperation rather than accusation. "This is not about punishment," he said. "It is about understanding, correcting past mistakes, and ensuring that all species can thrive together. The choice we make today will shape the future of the galaxy." At first, there was silence. Delegates blinked, shifted in their seats, and exchanged subtle glances. Some appeared angry, others confused, and a few simply stared at the human with disbelief. Alden remained composed. He had expected skepticism and knew it was part of the process. With patience, he continued, explaining the evidence, highlighting the benefits of transparency and illustrating how collaboration could create opportunities for everyone. He noticed subtle changes in the room. A few Trevorians exchanged nervous glances. Delegates who had previously ignored the Kryn now leaned forward, their curiosity piqued. Alden's calm, honest approach seemed to have a ripple effect. His words were not loud or commanding, yet they carried weight. The clarity of truth had a force stronger than intimidation. Questions came next. Some delegates challenged him, questioning the evidence or the motivations of the Queen. Alden listened carefully to each question, responding with patience and logic. He did not attempt to argue aggressively. Instead, he focused on clarity and fairness. The message is not to accuse, but to reveal so we can act with understanding. Every species here benefits when truth guides our decisions, he explained. Slowly, the room shifted. Delegates who had been skeptical began nodding, others murmured agreements. Alden felt a surge of cautious hope. The Queen's plan was working. By presenting the truth in a calm, clear manner, he was fostering understanding rather than division. Even the Kryn delegation's representatives straightened their posture, emboldened by the recognition that their concerns were now visible and validated. During the session, Alden moved through subtle interactions, addressing smaller delegations in quiet conversations, explaining details in ways that respected their customs. A species of translucent beings, the Lumeri, approached him, intrigued by the simplicity and honesty of his explanations. "You humans, you do not speak in layers. You speak what is and it reaches us," one Lumeri said, their voice melodic and soft. Alden smiled. Sometimes, seeing things simply helps everyone understand more clearly. The session continued for hours. Alden remained composed, answering questions, clarifying misunderstandings, and guiding the conversation with quiet authority. By midday, the energy in the hall had shifted entirely. Where there had been tension and cautious suspicion, now there was curiosity and cautious optimism. Delegates whispered to one another, reconsidering alliances and thinking about cooperation in ways they had not before. Alden realized that small actions grounded in honesty could transform entire systems. During a brief break, Alden stepped away to rest. He observed Queen Ceralia from a distance, her presence calm and commanding. She watched the hall with a serene focus, yet when her gaze met his across the room, she gave a small, approving nod. Alden felt a quiet pride. He was only a human, small and often underestimated, yet his role in this summit had begun to reshape the perspectives of hundreds of species. As afternoon approached, Alden faced a delicate situation. The Trevorians, realizing their manipulation had been revealed, attempted to shift blame subtly. They argued that the evidence was misinterpreted, that traditions justified their actions, and that humans could not possibly understand the complexity of interstellar trade. Alden listened carefully, acknowledging their perspective without compromise. Understanding past actions is important, but fairness must guide the future. We are not here to condemn, only to create clarity so all species can prosper together, he explained. His words resonated. The delegates listened, realizing that Alden's human simplicity was not naivety, but clarity. By refusing to be swayed by intimidation or pride, he had become a stabilizing force. Even the Trevorians, while uncomfortable, could not dismiss the logic and fairness of his presentation. His presence was a reminder that integrity held power in ways that cunning and manipulation could not match. By late afternoon, Alden returned to Queen Ceralia's side. "You have done well," she said softly, her golden eyes reflecting the ambient light. "The truth has been delivered, and it has been received not with anger but with attention. That is no small feat." Alden bowed slightly. "I only followed your guidance, Your Majesty." "Your wisdom made this possible," the Queen smiled faintly. "Your courage, clarity, and patience made the difference. You speak for humanity, but also for those who are overlooked. That is why your presence is significant. The Queen continued, tomorrow, the summit will witness reactions and decisions. Some will support fairness, others may resist. But today, a small human has reminded the galaxy that honesty, clarity, and courage cannot be ignored. Remember this, Alden. It is not power that shapes the galaxy, but the ability to act with integrity when others falter. That evening, Alden walked through the summit city once more. The floating platforms glowed softly, and the crystal towers shimmered in the light of the twin suns. He reflected on the day's events. He had come as an observer, a minor participant in a galaxy of giants, yet he had delivered truth where others had feared to tread. He had stood for the small, the overlooked, and the fair-minded, and in doing so had shifted the focus of the summit itself. As he prepared to rest, Alden thought of the Kryn delegation. They had entered the summit quiet, fearful, and disregarded. Today they had been acknowledged. Their voices had been heard, and they now had allies among other species. Alden understood that sometimes, being human meant acting with empathy and honesty, and that alone could inspire change across the galaxy. The night on Earthra Prime was serene. From his window, Alden watched the city glow with quiet brilliance. He knew tomorrow would bring challenges. The reactions to the truth he had revealed could spark debate, resistance, or negotiation, but he felt ready. Humans were often underestimated in the galaxy, but Alden now understood that their greatest strength lay not in technology, numbers, or power, but in integrity, courage, and clarity. And somewhere in the heart of the summit, Queen Ceralia watched, confident that the small human who had stood for truth was not merely a participant in this grand event. He was a symbol, a reminder that even a single individual, guided by honesty and empathy, could influence the course of civilizations. Alden closed his eyes, letting the calm of the city settle over him. Tomorrow he would continue his work, guiding the summit toward understanding, fairness, and collaboration. Today had been significant, but he knew the summit's journey was far from over. Yet he felt a quiet certainty. Truth, delivered with patience and empathy, could change the galaxy, and a human could be its messenger. The sun rose over Earthra Prime, scattering gold and violet light across the summit city. Alden Carter awoke with a mixture of anticipation and resolve. Yesterday, he had delivered the Queen's message, revealing a subtle deception that threatened the fairness of galactic trade. The response from the delegates had been encouraging, but today would test the impact of truth on a gathering filled with pride, tradition, and ambition. As Alden walked to the summit hall, he observed the atmosphere carefully. Delegates moved with more focus, speaking in hushed tones. Eyes that had once ignored the humans now followed him with interest. Whispers of curiosity rippled through the crowds. Alden understood that influence was growing, subtle yet undeniable, and it was his responsibility to ensure it continued to guide the summit toward fairness. He took a moment near the entrance to greet the Kryn delegation. Their eyes, once full of anxiety, now held cautious hope. Alden offered a quiet nod of encouragement. "Stay calm," he said softly. "The day will unfold, and truth has a way of guiding the wise." The Kryn representative's wings fluttered lightly. "We will follow your guidance," they replied. Alden felt a quiet satisfaction. Small actions, repeated with care, could create ripples across the entire galaxy. The hall was already buzzing as the delegates took their seats. At the center, on a slightly elevated platform, sat Queen Ceralia herself. She moved with calm authority, her golden eyes scanning the room, measuring every gesture, every whispered exchange. Alden approached the Queen's side, offering a respectful bow. "Your Majesty," he said quietly, "the Council awaits your guidance." The Queen nodded. "Alden, today is the day for clarity to shine fully. Trust in what you have begun, but observe carefully. Not all will accept truth easily." The session began, and the Queen rose to address the Council. Her voice resonated clearly across the hall, amplified by subtle acoustic technology that made even the quietest words reach the farthest delegates. She spoke of fairness, cooperation, and the importance of honesty in governance and trade. Every word was deliberate, measured, and full of authority. Then she revealed the truth openly. The Trevorians, who had claimed neutrality, had indeed manipulated trade routes and resources for their advantage. The evidence, now confirmed by the Queen herself, could no longer be denied or ignored. The room held its collective breath. Delegates leaned forward, whispered to each other, and paused in their discussions. The Queen's revelation was not accusatory but illuminating, highlighting the importance of transparency and the opportunity for collaboration moving forward. Alden observed quietly as reactions rippled through the hall. Some delegates were shocked, their pride challenged. Others felt relief, recognizing that previous suspicions had been justified. The Kryn delegation straightened with quiet pride, their voices finally acknowledged. Alden realized that the Queen's affirmation, paired with the human clarity of yesterday's message, had created a powerful moment of alignment. After the initial shock, the Queen turned her attention toward Alden. She spoke to the council, praising the human for his courage, clarity, and unwavering honesty. Alden Carter, she said, her voice strong yet warm, has delivered truth where it was overlooked, ensuring that fairness is not lost among pride or ambition. His human qualities, simplicity, empathy, and integrity, serve as a guide for all of us. The effect was immediate. Delegates who had been hesitant now paid closer attention to Alden, nodding and exchanging approving glances. The room, once divided by suspicion and hierarchy, began to feel a subtle unity. Alden's voice, supported by the Queen's authority, had become a beacon. The simplest human traits, honesty and clarity, were now shaping the conversation of an entire galaxy. Questions arose. Some delegates wanted to understand the details. Others sought reassurance that collaboration would continue to benefit all parties. Alden answered patiently, drawing on the Queen's guidance and his own observations. He emphasized fairness, cooperation, and the importance of correcting past imbalances. His calm demeanor encouraged trust. Where intimidation had failed, human integrity now prevailed. The Trevorians, though initially uncomfortable, listened carefully. Alden did not confront or shame them. He presented facts with clarity and offered paths forward. "We are not here to punish," he explained. "We are here to understand and improve together. Every species has a role in creating a galaxy where fairness guides our shared future." As the discussions continued, Alden noticed changes in the smaller delegations. Species that had been ignored or silenced now spoke with confidence. The Lumeri, the Kryn, and other minor delegations began to present their perspectives, and for the first time, their voices were taken seriously. Alden realized that true leadership did not come from power alone, but from encouraging others to be heard. By midday, the energy in the hall had shifted completely. The delegates moved from cautious suspicion to active engagement. Conversations became collaborative rather than defensive. Even factions that had once been rivals now explored possibilities for partnership. Alden felt a quiet pride. He had not imposed authority or demanded respect. He had simply spoken truth and acted with empathy. And now, the galaxy was responding. During a short break, Alden stepped out onto a balcony overlooking the summit city. The twin suns bathed the floating platforms in warm light, and streams of energy vehicles moved gracefully through the sky. The city was alive, reflecting the subtle yet profound change happening inside the hall. Alden thought of Queen Ceralia. She had trusted a human with a delicate mission, and that trust had been validated. When he returned to the hall, the Queen rose again. She spoke with a calm intensity, reviewing the importance of cooperation and emphasizing that fairness and honesty were essential for progress. The delegates listened with rapt attention. Then, in a moment of quiet authority, she gestured toward Alden. "Let this council recognize," she said, her voice echoing gently, "that a human has reminded us of what is possible when clarity and integrity guide action. Alden Carter, through courage and honesty, has inspired change among us all." A ripple ran through the council. Delegates turned toward Alden, some in astonishment, others in respect. The energy in the hall shifted again. Where there had been hesitation, now there was recognition. And then it happened, the first murmurs of approval, growing louder as more delegates turned to him, nodding and speaking his name with admiration. Alden's heart raced. He had never sought recognition or power. His goal had always been fairness and understanding. Yet now, the council, inspired by the Queen's words and his actions, began to look to him as a guiding figure. The energy in the room was electric, not violent or aggressive, but charged with possibility. He realized that the Queen's trust and the human qualities he had relied upon, honesty, empathy, and patience, had created a unique moment in galactic history. Even in a galaxy of prideful and powerful beings, the clarity of a single human voice could shape the direction of entire civilizations. Delegates approached him, some seeking advice, others expressing support. The Kryn, for instance, approached first, their wings fluttering in excitement. "We are grateful," their leader said. "Your voice has given us courage, and now we can be heard." Alden smiled. "Your courage was always there. I only helped it be seen." Other species, too, began seeking conversation with him. The Lumeri, the Zeroth, and even some Trevorians engaged respectfully. Alden answered with patience, guiding discussions toward collaboration, understanding, and shared benefit. By late afternoon, the summit hall felt different, lighter, more connected, and full of hope. As the final session of the day approached, Queen Cerilia rose once more. Her gaze swept across the council, and then she looked directly at Alden. "Let this assembly understand that leadership is not measured by size or power alone, but by the courage to act with integrity. Alden Carter has demonstrated this, and in doing so, has set an example for all of us." A quiet murmur began to swell into applause. Delegates, inspired by both the Queen and the human diplomat, turned toward him in unison. Alden felt an overwhelming mixture of humility and awe. He had not sought this moment, yet here it was, a recognition not of authority but of integrity. The simple human had reminded a galaxy of what mattered most: honesty, courage, and fairness. By the evening, the session concluded with renewed optimism. Delegates left the hall speaking of collaboration, fairness, and possibility. Alden returned to his quarters, exhausted yet exhilarated. He thought of the journey so far, from quiet observer to messenger of truth, now recognized by the most powerful beings in the summit. As night fell over Erythra Prime, Alden reflected on the day. He understood that his human qualities, simplicity, empathy, and honesty, had become a force in the galaxy. The Queen had trusted him, and in doing so had set the stage for a transformation that went beyond diplomacy. Tomorrow, the summit would continue, and Alden knew that more challenges awaited. But for the first time, he felt that humanity could be seen not as minor players, but as beings capable of inspiring hope and change through the strength of character alone. And somewhere in the heart of the city, Queen Cerilia watched with quiet satisfaction, confident that the small human she had trusted had already begun to change the galaxy, not through power or intimidation, but through truth, clarity, and integrity. The final day of the summit began with a calm, golden light spilling over Erythra Prime's crystalline city. Alden Carter awoke with a sense of quiet anticipation. Yesterday, the Queen had revealed the truth about the Trevorians, and the delegates had begun to see him not merely as a human observer, but as a voice of clarity, fairness, and integrity. Today would be the day that the full impact of his actions became evident. As he moved through the floating platforms toward the summit hall, he noticed subtle but meaningful shifts in behavior. Delegates who had once ignored humans now nodded politely as he passed. Whispers filled the air, filled with curiosity and, surprisingly, admiration. The Kryn delegation, whose voices he had championed, walked confidently beside him. Even species that had been distant or skeptical now approached with cautious respect. Alden understood that influence was not imposed. It was earned through action, integrity, and courage. Inside the hall, the atmosphere was electric. Delegates took their seats quickly, buzzing with discussion. The Queen stood at the central platform, radiant and composed. Her golden eyes scanned the room, resting briefly on Alden, as if giving him silent encouragement. Today, she did not simply speak to the council. She allowed Alden's work to take center stage. When the session began, Alden was invited to address the assembly again. He rose slowly, feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes upon him. Yet he did not feel fear, only clarity. He had spent days observing, listening, and speaking with honesty. Today, he would continue that path. He began by acknowledging the progress that had been made. "Delegates," he said, "we have taken steps together to understand the truth. Yesterday, we learned that hidden manipulation had affected trade and cooperation. Today, we have the opportunity to move forward with fairness, with clarity, and with respect for all voices in this council." His words were calm, measured, and intentional. As he spoke, he noticed the Kryn delegation smiling, their confidence restored. Other smaller species leaned forward, eager to participate. The larger delegations, including the Trevorians, watched closely, their expressions a mixture of respect and cautious calculation. Alden continued, emphasizing that collaboration, honesty, and empathy were not weaknesses. They were strengths that allowed civilizations to thrive together. The delegates listened in silence, but the energy in the hall was shifting. Where skepticism had lingered, now there was curiosity. Where hesitation had existed, now there was openness. Alden could feel the power of integrity, subtle yet undeniable, reshaping the room. Queen Ceralia spoke again, supporting his words. "Alden Carter has reminded us that leadership is not measured by size, influence, or intimidation," she said. "True leadership comes from clarity, courage, and the willingness to act for the good of all." Today, he demonstrates that humans, though small in number, possess qualities that can inspire the entire galaxy. Her praise created a stir. Delegates turned toward Alden, some whispering, others nodding. The room felt alive, no longer constrained by hierarchy or fear, but energized by the recognition that fairness and integrity mattered more than power or tradition. Questions came, as they always did. Delegates sought clarity on new agreements, trade fairness, and collaborative projects. Alden answered each with patience and honesty. He did not use grandiose language or complex arguments. He spoke plainly, with empathy, and always with fairness as his guide. The result was remarkable. Discussions that could have turned contentious instead became collaborative. Voices that were once ignored were now being heard. By midday, a sense of unity had begun to emerge. Delegates who had been rivals exchanged ideas, finding common ground in principles of fairness and cooperation. The Kryn delegation, now confident and supported, presented their proposals for equitable trade. Alden guided them subtly, helping them articulate their points in ways that resonated across species. Their voices were no longer small. They were part of the conversation, respected and valued. Alden felt a gentle tap on his shoulder. He turned to see Queen Ceralia smiling warmly. "The council is responding well," she said. "You have helped them see that integrity and honesty can guide decisions, even among the most complex civilizations. But one moment remains. Be ready." He nodded, though his curiosity was piqued. The Queen led him to the central platform where all delegates could see. Alden felt the weight of the moment, but also a sense of calm. He had spent days speaking truthfully, advocating for fairness and demonstrating human values. Now the culmination of that work would unfold. Queen Cerilia began to speak, her voice commanding attention. "Delegates," she said, "we have witnessed courage and clarity in action. Today, we recognize that leadership does not belong only to those of great power or ancient lineage. Leadership belongs to those who act with honesty, empathy, and integrity. Among us stands a human, Alden Carter, who embodies these principles." Alden felt a wave of disbelief. He had never sought recognition. He had only acted according to what was right. Yet, as the Queen spoke, he could see the delegates shifting their attention toward him. Eyes widened, whispers spread, and the energy in the room intensified. Then something extraordinary happened. One delegate, a towering figure of crystalline form, rose and shouted, "He is the leader we need." Others quickly followed, their voices joining in. "He is our guide. A human shows us the path." The murmurs grew into a chorus. "King, king, king." Alden froze for a moment, overwhelmed by the sudden recognition. He looked at Queen Cerilia, who nodded approvingly. "Step forward," she said softly. "Your actions have earned the respect of all. Accept their acknowledgement." Taking a deep breath, Alden stepped forward. He did not raise his voice or seek to command. Instead, he allowed the moment to exist as it was, a recognition of fairness, clarity, and integrity. Delegates continued to shout and cheer, not in obedience but in admiration. For a moment the hall felt united, not by fear or power but by respect and shared values. The Kryn delegation approached, offering congratulations. "Your courage has given us hope," they said. Alden smiled. "You had courage all along," he replied. "I only helped it be seen." Others came forward, Lumeri, Zeroth, even some Trevorians, acknowledging his guidance and the fairness he had brought to their discussions. Queen Cerilia raised her hand, calling for silence. The hall quieted and she spoke again. "Let this council understand that leadership is not defined by size, influence, or history. Leadership is defined by action, by honesty, and by the ability to inspire others. Alden Carter has demonstrated this. Today, we recognize not only his achievements but the power of human values, clarity, empathy, and courage to guide civilizations." Alden felt a profound sense of humility. He had never sought titles, recognition, or power. Yet here, in the heart of the galaxy, the Council acknowledged him, not for his authority, but for his integrity. It was a validation of every choice he had made, every act of honesty and fairness he had committed. The delegates began discussing new alliances, fairer trade agreements, and collaborative projects. Alden observed quietly, offering guidance when asked, but allowing the council to take ownership of their decisions. His role was no longer to lead through words alone, it was to inspire action through example. By evening, the summit city glowed softly under twin suns, and the floating platforms shimmered like rivers of light. Alden returned to his quarters, reflecting on the journey. From a quiet human observer, underestimated by many, he had become a symbol of leadership through integrity. The Queen's trust, the Council's recognition, and his own human values had created a moment that would resonate far beyond the summit. As night fell, Alden looked out over the city. The delegates were still moving through the platforms, discussing, negotiating, and building the future together. He understood that leadership was not about titles or power. It was about courage, honesty, and the ability to act with fairness in a complex world. Somewhere in the summit, Queen Cerilia watched with quiet pride. She had seen the potential of a human long underestimated, and allowed that potential to shape a moment in galactic history. Alden Carter had shown that even a single human, guided by integrity, could inspire a galaxy to rise above suspicion, pride, and manipulation. And as the stars began to shine over Earthra Prime, Alden Carter, the human who had acted with clarity, courage, and empathy, realized something profound. Titles and recognition were fleeting, but actions rooted in truth and fairness could change the course of civilizations. And in that moment, the galaxy had seen the strength of humanity like never before.